vortex. I wanted to show you something that I've been doing that's really been helping me. If I can remember to do it. You see? I'm walking around. Barefoot on the ground. This helps. Why? Well, supposedly, you feel more connected to the earth. You feel more connected to the ground, obviously, because you're touching it with your bare feet. But it's supposed to be something about like the energy. Forgive me for not knowing the exact reason, but I just know that it helps with a lot of things. It helps with balance, it helps with inflammation, it helps with like giving you a more positive outlook. I know that my posture is better because I've noticed that if I do this on a more regular basis, when I'm sitting at church, we typically stand up, during the majority of the service, but whenever we sit down, during the homily, I notice that my posture is like pretty sturdy. So, and this is like the perfect time of year to do it. Like right before the fall. So, this is a beautiful day. Absolutely breathtaking. I really don't like positive videos. Like, I don't like videos where people are just like overly positive and like revoltingly optimistic, as I call it, because it's like, to me that seems kind of fake. So if I resemble that at all, please forgive me. But I also don't like negativity either. And I spent a lot of my life being that person. And something I noticed just from the AA meetings I've been attending recently is like, it's like cool to dog yourself, Because people will say like, I'm an alcoholic and my problem is me, or like they'll say things about themselves to just like constantly put themselves down. And I think that's like reverse narcissism. So, well, it's actually called reverse pride. So I guess that's like the same thing, where like you just think really low of yourself and you beat yourself up. And I know that I've definitely been guilty of doing that. And I think that there's a healthy way to talk about problems that you have without being like, I'm the problem all the time. I'm a piece of shit. And you can try to work on that without just succumbing to that and being like, this is just the way that I am. But it seems like people have a hard time, like whether they're like in denial of their negative qualities or they highlight their negative qualities, and because they highlight those negative qualities, they can't see anything else about themselves, And they also can't see that those negative qualities make the positive qualities more positive, You know, like it's all part of it. But I want to be open-minded. But I just really hate the like negative self-talk because I'm really good at that shit. You know? Like I'm reading this book right now that's all about spirituality and how, well, orthodoxy specifically is the cure to all these maladies, specifically with like mental illness, and mental illness stems from like problems of the soul. And, you know, psychology followed by psychiatry is basically just this like reaction to not believing in God, to not trusting in God. And that's not to say that like you're not trying. If you have really bad anxiety or depression or something, like you're not trying. And I think that we need to get away from that. Because I think that one of the ways that the devil attacks us is by convincing us that we're not doing enough and our faith sucks. But I don't think the devil would be attacking us if that were true. You know? That wouldn't be a thing that he would feel the need to keep yelling at us about. So it's like if he can't get to us through all these other means, he's going to get to us through our faith. And so, see, I can't talk about that like in AA because like, I think one of the biggest issues is that people can't admit that the devil exists. And if they can't admit that he's real, then they definitely don't see how active he is, you know? So like what I'm doing right now, this is like positive steps. And I have to remind myself that I do stuff like this, especially when I feel like a failure. I have to be like, no, but you're doing this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and you weren't doing that before. You weren't doing any of that before. But if like you're taking all these steps in the right direction and you're trying to be a better person and you're trying to get closer to God and you're trying to, you know, take care of your health and everything, it's like, yeah, you're going to be met with a lot of resistance because there's always going to be evil opposing forces that don't want you to succeed, you know? Like I met this guy last night who has a prosthetic leg, and he told me he lost his leg in combat, but it took him about like 6 months to recover from that. But he runs. Like he does these marathons and shit. And I was just asking him about phantom pains, and he said he thinks it's bullshit, but because he's never actually experienced them. But he's like, I'm not saying that other people haven't experienced them, I'm just saying that I haven't. But I don't know, I think that we all like experience things differently, and then we're convinced that other people don't try hard enough. I'm not saying that he was even suggesting that, but you know, when I told him I was schizophrenic, he said that he had a schizophrenic friend that would like call him all the time and ask him questions about satellites and which I think is cool. Like if you're schizophrenic, like you're obviously not, you know, too far off if like you're able to talk to people still and ask them questions and to make sure that you know, you're not lying to yourself, or you're not just believing bullshit that you want to believe. You know? Like, a lot of people don't know that they can do that. And you're really, really lucky if you're, like, spiritually sound enough to be able to ask questions and have discernment. Because there have been a lot of times where I felt like I was definitely on the edge of something. And I'm sure that plenty of people who watch this channel have been convinced of that. But it's like, I'm able to snap myself out of it, though. And it really is awareness. But, you know, that despair and that epic sadness, that ego, I think it has a lot to do with narcissism, but I think it also has to do with just, you know, the self-pity, which I guess stems from the same place, but let's walk back. Gotta drive to work now. Gotta put my socks on. But, hold on, Vortex. Okay, so what was I talking about? Before this thing starts dinging at me. You were talking about how you don't follow the rules. See? My car will prove to the vortex that I don't follow the rules. But yeah, so when you feel sorry for yourself and you start thinking that you can't do anything different, then that apathy sets in. And when the apathy sets in, that's a really, really dangerous place to be in. Because then you can convince yourself that you're fine with not giving a fuck. That you're really overweight, or you're addicted to drugs, or you watch internet porn every single night. You can convince yourself of all kinds of things because your ego is stuck in the victim mentality of, well, I can't change. I'm stuck this way forever. And, you know, I remember when I was drinking a lot of vodka, I was thinking, man, I could stop. I knew that I had to like go to the bitter end with it. I knew that shit was going to end badly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And that's exactly what happened. But I'm really lucky that other things didn't have to end like that. I'm really glad it was just booze. But you know, I've talked about this before. I don't really talk about it a lot because it's not something that I have struggled with anywhere near as much as other people. But you know, I had this stint where I was, you know, watching ridiculous amounts of internet porn. It was like a whole month just devoted to nothing but playing with myself and feeling like shit about it. And then my laptop got a bunch of viruses on it, and that was such a blessing. And I never looked at porn after that because I figured, man, that's what's happening in my brain, and that was very true. I think that everything operates as some kind of virus. So, you know, in the Orthodoxy we talk about the soul. Now, I'm not sure how to pronounce this word. It's spelled N-O-U-S, so that's either nous, nous, or nos. I really should look this up, but it's Greek. It's Greek meaning the soul. So that's like your third eye. And if you get really close with God, hold on a second, I'm gonna close this. If you get really close with God, that third eye is opened, and you can have these visions with God all the time. And I actually think that's what schizophrenia is, and that's why we're attacked so much, and that's why paranoid schizophrenics say to hell with God altogether, because they're just knee deep in the darkness. So because just reading this book is crazy, like how there are so many things that I've experienced like in sobriety, and there's so many things that I've experienced since I became Orthodox, and there are things I've experienced doing stand-up comedy, and even like really terrible experiences when I was like heavily addicted to different things, and either I couldn't stop drinking, or I couldn't stop smoking pot, or I couldn't stop smoking cigarettes, I couldn't stop watching porn, or something like that. It was like all these different ways that I was debasing myself. And I had this level of apathy about it, where I was like, you know, you're just a loser. This is what you get for being a loser. And I still had that faith, though, the whole time. I still had that faith that eventually, like, I would come out of it, and maybe it was just like a phase that I had to go through in order to get to the other side of it. So, I mean, I really can't explain how I knew that, but you know, I used to really like have these visions of like my future and like what was going to happen in regards to addiction. Like, I guess you'd call that a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's just like there were all these things that I realized about myself that, you know, just listen to like other like recovering alcoholics is so crazy to me, like that it takes a 12-step program for them to be the slightest bit introspective. But like, I guess I don't have that in common with them. That doesn't mean that I didn't drink like they drank, but I've just always been super self-aware. Like when I started drinking, I knew that I was going to die that way if I kept doing it, because it was such a toxic thing for me. But it's almost like I reveled in the toxicity. I reveled in like just being that piece of shit, you know? Now I could just say, well, I was just in my 20s and that's what we do. But like, I don't know, man. I've just been thinking a lot about, you know, my past behavior and like why I got so hung up on certain things, and I feel like it was all coming from the same place of just like being insecure with myself in this world. And then once I started making art, I just got more comfortable with the fact that I was weird out. I got more comfortable with the fact that I was alone. I got more comfortable with the fact that I am like a total mess and things are the way that they are. And I think for a lot of people, they just like fight that, you know, they fight who they are, and they fight. I'm probably contradicting myself quite a bit, am I not? Yeah, a lot of people fight a lot of things that they're thinking or feeling, and they convince themselves that they're wrong. Like for me, like whenever I was in a relationship, I was like, man, why is this so hard? Why is this so hard for me to be around other people? Why is this so hard for me to like want to have sex with this person? You know, I thought that I loved this person. I thought that I wanted to be with this person. And I don't know if those like hormonal changes, you know, because apparently, you know, with menopause and all that shit, you know, you have all these like drastic hormonal changes. And I'm like, dude, like, I feel like I've already experienced that. Because like, I just don't have that, I don't have these desires that a lot of people have. But I've said it before, and you know I'm going to keep saying it, that, you know, the technology has really rewired people. And it's changed our desires. It's changed the way that we look at ourselves, the way that we look at other people, the way that we look at relationships. And so it's like everything feels like a damn strip club. Like you're just tossing dollar bills at something, you know, because you want it to satisfy you for the time being. It's like eye candy or temporary satisfaction. But like, yeah, I'm very lucky to know that there's really no hope in this world. Like, so many natural things have been so corrupted, it's not even funny. And people have lost respect, they've lost interest. They don't have any interest in preserving what used to be good about, you know, this country. And so, I don't know, like, I've been thinking a lot about how like abortion and gun violence are the same issue, because like both conservatives and liberals are like obsessed with what they think of as life. Like they think that they can quantify life. Like, so if you're a liberal and you hate gun violence, you think gun violence is terrible, but you're in favor of abortion, that doesn't seem logical. And vice versa, you know? So it's like if you're... I mean, I'm not saying that conservatives are fine with gun violence, but what I'm saying is that, like, it just seems like all these issues, like, there are certain people that they make it seem like it's an issue. Like, it's an issue to have irresponsible sex and then to rip out your fetus. Like, to a conservative, that's an issue. That's a morality issue, right? To a liberal, it's an issue to care more about guns than it is to care about children getting killed in a school or a church or something. You know? So it's like they're fighting over morality, but neither one of them make a sense because they're not consistent. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is other than Jonestown. But like, but I'm so cynical, man. But like, I just that was a joke, by the way. That was a joke. It really was a joke. I promise it was a joke. But yeah, I wanted to talk more about the soul sickness of society, but I think I'm gonna leave that for another video. So I was gonna say peace out, but it really should be peace in.